What happens after a supreme leader dies? For decades, the Islamic Republic of Iran revolved around one man. A man whose voice shaped the country's politics, whose decisions influenced wars and alliances across the Middle East, and whose authority stood above presidents, generals, and politicians. That man was Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader for more than 30 years. From the moment he took power in 1989, his authority became the center of Iran's political universe. Every major decision, from foreign policy to military strategy, ultimately passed through his hands. But history has shown something again and again. Even the most powerful leaders cannot escape time. On the morning of February 28, 2026, the world woke up to shocking news. Reports began spreading that the supreme leader of Iran had been killed during a wave of military strikes around Tehran. Within hours, global media confirmed what many had feared: Ali Khamenei was dead. According to multiple reports, he was killed during coordinated airstrikes carried out amid escalating conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States. For Iran, this was not just the death of a leader. It was the sudden removal of the most powerful figure in the entire political system. Khamenei had ruled Iran for over 3 decades, guiding the country through wars, sanctions, protests, and international pressure. His authority was so deeply embedded in Iran's government that many analysts believed the state itself revolved around his leadership. When such a figure disappears overnight, the consequences can be unpredictable. History tells us that when powerful leaders die suddenly, entire nations can enter periods of uncertainty. Governments struggle to maintain stability. Political factions compete for influence. Military leaders move quietly behind the scenes. And ordinary people wonder what will happen next. In some countries, the death of a ruler opens the door to reform and change. In others, it triggers power struggles, instability, or even conflict. Iran's system is particularly sensitive to this kind of moment. Unlike many countries where power is shared between elected officials, Iran's political structure places extraordinary authority in the hands of the supreme leader. The supreme leader is not simply a symbolic religious figure. He is the commander of the armed forces, the overseer of the judiciary, and the ultimate authority over the country's strategic decisions. Presidents may change, parliaments may debate laws, but the supreme leader remains the final voice in Iran's political system. That is why the death of Ali Khamenei created immediate questions around the world. Who would take control of Iran now? Would the transition of power be peaceful? Or would different factions compete to shape the future of the country? In theory, Iran has a constitutional process for this situation. According to the country's laws, when the supreme leader dies, a temporary leadership council takes control until a new leader is selected by the Assembly of Experts, a group of senior clerics responsible for choosing the next supreme leader. But theory and reality are often very different. Within days of Khamenei's death, Iran's political system began moving quickly to fill the vacuum. The Assembly of Experts gathered to decide the future leadership of the country. Behind closed doors, debates took place between clerics, political figures, and powerful security institutions. Eventually, a controversial decision emerged. Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of Ali Khamenei, was selected as the new supreme leader. This decision surprised many observers. The Islamic Republic was originally founded on revolutionary principles that rejected hereditary rule. Yet the rise of Khamenei's son suggested that the political system was evolving in unexpected ways. Analysts noted that powerful security institutions, particularly the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, appeared to play a major role in shaping the transition of power. Across the Middle East and beyond, governments watched the situation closely. The death of such a powerful figure rarely affects only one country. Iran plays a central role in regional politics, supporting alliances and influencing conflicts across multiple nations. Any change in its leadership could shift the balance of power across the region. Inside Iran, reactions were complex. For some supporters of the government, Khamenei's death was viewed as martyrdom and a moment of national unity. For others, it raised deep uncertainty about the future direction of the country. After all, when a leader dominates political life for more than 3 decades, replacing that authority is never simple. But Iran is not the first nation in history to face this kind of moment. Throughout history, the sudden death of powerful rulers has often reshaped entire civilizations. When Joseph Stalin died in 1953, the Soviet Union entered a hidden struggle for power that would eventually change the direction of the Cold War. When Mao Zedong died in 1976, China faced a fierce political battle before beginning a new era of economic reform. And when other long-ruling leaders disappeared, their countries often entered periods of uncertainty, reform, or even revolution. This is the pattern of power in history. The stronger a leader becomes, the more uncertain the future becomes after they are gone. Today, Iran stands at one of those historical crossroads. The death of Ali Khamenei did not simply close a chapter in Iranian politics. It opened a new one filled with unanswered questions. Will the new leadership maintain the same path? Will internal divisions grow stronger? Or will the country move in a different direction entirely? No one yet knows the full answer. But one thing is certain: when a supreme leader dies, the story of a nation is forced to begin again. How supreme leaders control a nation. To understand why the death of a supreme leader can shake an entire country, we first need to understand what the title actually means. In many nations, political power is divided between different institutions. Presidents make decisions, parliaments pass laws, courts interpret those laws, and the military answers to civilian authority. But in Iran's system, power is structured very differently. At the very top of the political pyramid sits the supreme leader, a position that combines religious authority, political influence, and military control in a single role. The idea behind this system emerged from the 1979 Iranian Revolution, when the monarchy of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was overthrown and replaced with an Islamic republic. The revolutionary leadership believed that political power should be guided by religious scholars who could ensure that the state followed Islamic principles. Out of this vision came the doctrine known as Vilayat Faqih, often translated as the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. According to this doctrine, a senior Islamic scholar should act as the ultimate guardian of the nation, ensuring that the government remains aligned with Islamic law and revolutionary values. In theory, Iran still has many of the institutions that exist in other republics. The country elects a president. It has a parliament known as the Majlis. It even holds elections for various offices. On the surface, these institutions resemble those found in other political systems around the world. But above all of them stands the supreme leader, whose authority can override decisions made by any other branch of government. The supreme leader is the commander-in-chief of Iran's armed forces, which includes not only the regular military but also the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, commonly known as the IRGC. This means that the nation's military strategy, defense policy, and security decisions ultimately fall under the leader's control. In a region as politically tense as the Middle East, that authority carries enormous weight. Beyond the military, the supreme leader also has deep influence over the judiciary. Senior judges, including the head of the judicial system, are appointed under structures that ultimately answer to the leader. This creates a system in which the legal framework of the country remains closely aligned with the ideological direction set by the top leadership. Another powerful tool of control comes through the Guardian Council, a body of clerics and legal scholars responsible for reviewing legislation and approving candidates who wish to run in elections. Half of the members of this council are directly appointed by the supreme leader, while the others are indirectly chosen through institutions he influences. This means that even though Iran holds elections, the candidates who appear on the ballot must first pass through a system shaped by the supreme leader's authority. Through these institutions, the leader's influence reaches into nearly every part of the political structure. Decisions about domestic policy, foreign relations, media regulation, and national security are all guided by a framework established at the very top. Over time, this creates a political environment where loyalty to the supreme leader becomes a central factor in maintaining stability within the government. However, political authority is not maintained through institutions alone. Long-ruling leaders also build networks of trusted allies throughout the state. Over decades in power, a supreme leader can shape entire generations of political figures, military officers, religious scholars, and administrators who owe their positions, in part, to his leadership. These networks become deeply embedded in the system, forming a kind of invisible architecture of power that operates behind official titles and public speeches. Ali Khamenei ruled Iran for more than 30 years, and during that time he oversaw the development of exactly this kind of system. Many of the country's most influential security officials, religious leaders, and political figures rose to prominence during his tenure. Some analysts argue that this long period of leadership allowed him to build one of the most centralized political structures in modern Middle Eastern history. This is why the death of a supreme leader creates such uncertainty. When a single figure has guided a nation's political direction for decades, his absence leaves a gap that cannot easily be filled overnight. Even if a successor is quickly appointed, the networks of loyalty, influence, and authority built around the previous leader do not instantly transfer to the new one. History shows that transitions of power in such systems can unfold in different ways. In some cases, the institutions built by the leader remain strong enough to ensure a relatively smooth succession. In other cases, competing factions within the government begin quietly testing their influence, each attempting to shape the new political landscape. Iran's system was designed to provide continuity, but like any political structure centered on a single authority, it ultimately depends on the ability of the next leader to maintain the balance between institutions, ideology, and power. And that balance becomes especially fragile in the moments after a supreme leader is gone. Because when a nation has been guided by one voice for decades, the silence that follows can echo far beyond its borders. The hidden power structures in Iran. When people look at Iran from the outside, they often see a simple structure: a president, a parliament, and a supreme leader at the top. But beneath this visible political system lies a much deeper network of institutions, security forces, and councils that quietly shape the direction of the country. These hidden structures are not always visible in headlines, yet they hold enormous influence over how power is exercised inside the Islamic Republic. At the center of this deeper system stands one of the most powerful organizations in the country, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, often known simply as the Revolutionary Guards. Created after the 1979 Iranian Revolution, the Guards were originally intended to protect the new Islamic government from internal and external threats. Over the decades, however, they evolved into something far larger than a traditional military force. Today, the Revolutionary Guards operate as a powerful institution that combines military power, intelligence capabilities, political influence, and economic control. Unlike Iran's regular army, which focuses on traditional defense, the Revolutionary Guards are responsible for protecting the ideology and survival of the Islamic Republic itself. They command elite military units, including the Quds Force, which oversees Iran's operations and alliances across the Middle East. At the same time, the Guards maintain internal security forces and intelligence networks that monitor political activity inside the country. Over time, this dual role has allowed them to become one of the most influential actors in Iran's political system. But the Guards' influence does not stop at the military level. Over the years, they have also expanded into the economic life of the country. Analysts estimate that organizations connected to the Revolutionary Guards control large sectors of Iran's economy, including construction projects, energy infrastructure, and financial institutions. Some estimates suggest that businesses linked to the Guards may control between 20 and 40% of Iran's economy, giving them enormous leverage over both economic policy and employment. Alongside the Revolutionary Guards exists another institution that quietly shapes Iran's political landscape, the Guardian Council. This council may sound like a simple legal body, but its powers extend far beyond reviewing laws. The Guardian Council acts as a gatekeeper for the entire political system. Every law passed by Iran's parliament must be reviewed by the council to ensure it aligns with both the constitution and Islamic law. If the council disagrees with a law, it can veto it and send it back to parliament. Perhaps even more important is the council's role in elections. Before any candidate can run for president, parliament, or even the assembly of experts, they must first be approved by the Guardian Council. This process allows the council to disqualify candidates who are seen as incompatible with the political direction of the Islamic Republic. In practice, this means the council plays a major role in determining who can participate in Iran's political system in the first place. Another key institution operating behind the scenes is the Expediency Discernment Council. This body was created to resolve disputes between the parliament and the Guardian Council. When lawmakers pass legislation that conflicts with the Guardian Council's interpretation of Islamic law or the Constitution, the Expediency Council steps in to mediate. However, its role has gradually expanded beyond simple mediation. Over time, it has become a powerful advisory body that influences long-term national policies and strategic decisions. What makes these institutions particularly important is the way they connect back to the supreme leader. Many members of these councils are appointed directly by the leader or chosen through institutions that he controls. This creates a network of authority that extends throughout the political system. Even when different institutions appear to operate independently, their leadership often remains closely tied to the supreme leader's influence. In addition to formal institutions, Iran also maintains a large paramilitary organization known as the Basij. This volunteer force operates under the command of the Revolutionary Guards and maintains branches in cities, towns, universities, and workplaces across the country. The Basij plays a role in internal security, public mobilization, and monitoring social activity. During times of protest or political unrest, Basij units are often deployed to support government authority. Together, these organizations form a complex system that extends far beyond the visible institutions of government. Presidents may change, elections may take place, and policies may evolve, but these deeper structures help ensure that the core ideology and security of the Islamic Republic remain intact. This hidden architecture of power is one of the reasons why Iran has remained politically stable despite decades of international pressure, economic sanctions, and regional conflict. The system was designed not only to govern the country, but also to protect itself from sudden political shifts. Yet this structure also raises an important question when a supreme leader dies. Because while institutions like the Revolutionary Guards, the Guardian Council, and the Expediency Council continue to function, the balance between them was often managed by the authority of a single leader. Without that central figure, the relationships between these powerful institutions can begin to shift. And when that happens, the hidden structures of power may become more visible than ever before. Historical examples of powerful rulers dying. Throughout history, the death of a powerful ruler has often marked the beginning of a turning point for entire nations. When a leader governs a country for decades, their authority becomes deeply woven into every institution, decision, and relationship within the state. Ministers adapt to their leadership style, military commanders align their strategies with the ruler's vision, and political systems gradually evolve around a single center of power. But when that leader suddenly disappears, the structure that once seemed stable can quickly become uncertain. History offers many examples of this moment. The moment when a dominant figure dies and a nation must decide what comes next. One of the most famous examples occurred in 1953, when Joseph Stalin died after ruling the Soviet Union for nearly 3 decades. Stalin had built one of the most centralized political systems in modern history. He controlled the Communist Party, the military, the intelligence agencies, and the entire political structure of the Soviet state. For many years, his authority was so absolute that even the highest officials in the government feared challenging him. When Stalin died, the Soviet Union entered a quiet but intense struggle for power. Several senior leaders began competing to shape the future of the country. Among them were figures like Nikita Khrushchev, Georgy Malenkov, and Lavrentiy Beria. Behind closed doors, alliances shifted rapidly. Political maneuvering became intense as each faction attempted to gain influence within the Communist Party and the security apparatus. Eventually, Khrushchev emerged as the dominant figure, and under his leadership the Soviet Union began moving away from the harsh policies that had defined Stalin's rule. Another dramatic transition occurred in 1976, when Mao Zedong, the founder of the People's Republic of China, died after nearly 3 decades in power. Mao's leadership had shaped every aspect of Chinese political life. His revolutionary campaigns, including the Cultural Revolution, had deeply transformed Chinese society and the Communist Party itself. But when Mao died, China faced a moment of profound uncertainty. Several competing factions existed within the Communist Party. One group, later known as the Gang of Four, attempted to maintain the radical ideological policies associated with Mao's later years. Meanwhile, other leaders believed China needed a more pragmatic approach to stabilize the country after years of upheaval. In the end, power gradually shifted toward Deng Xiaoping, a veteran revolutionary who would guide China toward a dramatically different path. Under Deng's leadership, China began opening its economy, launching reforms that would eventually transform the country into one of the largest economic powers in the world. The death of Mao, therefore, did not simply mark the end of one leader's era. It opened the door to an entirely new chapter in China's history. Another important example comes from the Middle East itself. In 1970, Gamal Abdel Nasser, one of the most influential Arab leaders of the 20th century, died suddenly after leading Egypt for nearly 2 decades. Nasser had become a symbol of Arab nationalism and political independence during a time of enormous regional change. His speeches inspired millions, and his political vision shaped the direction of Egypt and much of the Arab world. When Nasser died, many Egyptians wondered whether anyone could replace his influence. The man who eventually succeeded him, Anwar Sadat, initially appeared to be a transitional figure. Yet over time Sadat charted a very different course for Egypt, eventually signing a historic peace agreement with Israel in 1978 during the Camp David Accords. Once again, the death of a powerful ruler reshaped the political direction of an entire nation. These examples reveal an important pattern in history. When a powerful leader dies, 3 broad possibilities often emerge. In some cases, the system they built continues largely unchanged. A successor rises from within the same political structure and maintains the existing policies and institutions. This kind of transition prioritizes stability and continuity. In other cases, the new leadership begins slowly altering the direction of the country. Policies evolve, alliances shift, and new priorities begin to emerge. Over time, the political system gradually transforms into something different from what existed under the previous ruler. And in more dramatic cases, the death of a dominant leader can trigger internal struggles that destabilize the state itself. Rival factions compete for control, institutions clash over authority, and uncertainty spreads through the political system. Which of these paths a nation follows often depends on the strength of its institutions and the ability of its leaders to manage the transition of power. That is why moments like these are so closely watched by historians, analysts, and governments around the world. When a ruler who has dominated political life for decades suddenly disappears, the future of the nation can become remarkably unpredictable. And today, many observers are asking whether Iran may now be entering one of those historical moments. What could happen to Iran next? When a powerful leader dies, the most important question is always the same. What happens next? In Iran's case, the answer is not simple. The country is entering one of the most uncertain political moments it has faced in decades. The death of Ali Khamenei triggered an immediate leadership transition, forcing the political system to react quickly in order to prevent instability. Under Iran's constitution, a temporary leadership council briefly assumed the responsibilities of the supreme leader until a successor could be chosen. Within days, Iran's assembly of experts announced a new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the former leader. But the selection of a successor does not necessarily mean the uncertainty has ended. History shows that the real consequences of such transitions often appear months or even years later. Analysts believe Iran could now move in several possible directions, each one shaping the country's future in very different ways. Scenario 1: Continuity of the system. The first and perhaps most likely possibility is continuity. In this scenario, the Islamic Republic maintains the same political structure that has existed for decades. The new supreme leader continues the policies of the previous leadership, while powerful institutions like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps maintain stability inside the state. Early reports already suggest that Iran's security institutions moved quickly to preserve continuity after Khamenei's death. The government's command structure remained operational, and key military and political figures publicly pledged their support to the new leadership. In many ways, this is exactly what the system was designed to do. The Islamic Republic built multiple layers of institutions to prevent sudden collapse if one leader disappears. If this structure continues functioning smoothly, Iran may simply enter a new era that looks very similar to the old one. However, continuity does not mean stability forever. Even if the political system survives unchanged, the new leader may not have the same authority that Ali Khamenei held after decades in power. Some analysts believe that future leadership may become more collective, with decisions influenced heavily by security institutions and senior political figures rather than a single dominant personality. Scenario 2: Greater military influence. A second possibility involves a shift in the balance of power toward the military and security institutions. For decades, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has been one of the most powerful organizations in Iran. In the aftermath of Khamenei's death, some reports suggest that the Revolutionary Guards played a significant role in supporting the leadership transition. If this influence continues to grow, Iran could gradually evolve into a system where military institutions hold even greater authority over national policy. This would not necessarily mean a traditional military dictatorship. Instead, it could create a hybrid system where religious leadership continues to exist, but real decision-making power increasingly shifts towards security elites and military commanders. Such a transformation could have major consequences for the region. A government more heavily influenced by military institutions may adopt a more confrontational foreign policy, particularly in conflicts involving the United States, Israel, or regional rivals. Scenario 3: Internal political pressure. Another possibility lies within Iran's own society. Over the past decade, Iran has experienced waves of internal protest, including the demonstrations that followed the death of Mahsa Amini in 2022. Those protests became one of the largest challenges to the Iranian government in recent history. Although the government eventually suppressed those demonstrations, they revealed a deeper tension inside Iranian society. Many younger Iranians have grown increasingly frustrated with economic difficulties, social restrictions, and political limitations. Moments of leadership transition can sometimes reopen these pressures. When a long-standing ruler disappears, opposition movements may view the situation as an opportunity to push for reforms. However, predicting whether such movements could reshape Iran's political system is extremely difficult. Iran's security institutions remain powerful, and the government has historically shown a strong ability to maintain control during periods of unrest. Scenario 4: A gradual transformation. The final possibility is a slower and more subtle transformation. Rather than dramatic change or immediate conflict, Iran may gradually adapt its political system to a new generation of leaders. Policies might evolve, economic strategies might shift, and foreign relations could take on new priorities. Transitions like this often unfold quietly over many years. They do not appear as sudden revolutions, but rather as a slow reshaping of political institutions and national strategy. History has seen many examples of such gradual shifts. After the deaths of long-ruling leaders in other countries, new leadership sometimes introduced reforms, changed economic policies, or adjusted foreign relations in ways that slowly transformed the state. Whether Iran follows that path remains uncertain. A nation at a crossroads. What makes this moment so significant is that all of these possibilities remain open at the same time. Iran could maintain its existing system. It could experience rising military influence. Internal pressures could reshape the political landscape, or the country could evolve slowly into something different. Which path becomes reality will depend on many factors: the strength of Iran's institutions, the decisions of its new leadership, the influence of powerful security organizations, and the response of Iranian society itself. For now, the world is watching carefully. Because whenever a ruler who dominated political life for decades disappears, the future of the nation they leave behind becomes one of the most important questions in global politics. And for Iran, that story is only just beginning. The uncertain future of the Middle East. When a powerful leader dies in the Middle East, the consequences rarely remain limited to one country. The region is deeply interconnected, politically, militarily, and ideologically. Alliances stretch across borders, conflicts involve multiple actors, and decisions made in one capital often echo across the entire region. For decades, Ali Khamenei played a central role in shaping Iran's position in the Middle East. As supreme leader, he held the final authority over Iran's foreign policy, military strategy, and regional alliances. Under his leadership, Iran built an extensive network of influence stretching far beyond its borders. This influence extended through political alliances, military partnerships, and regional movements. In places like Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen, Iran developed relationships that allowed it to project power far beyond its own territory. These networks became one of the defining features of Iran's strategy in the region. But leadership transitions can change how such strategies evolve. The question now facing analysts and governments across the world is simple, yet extremely difficult to answer. Will Iran's regional strategy remain the same, or will it begin to change under new leadership? One possibility is that Iran continues the same approach it has followed for years. The country may maintain its alliances and strategic partnerships while continuing to influence regional politics through diplomacy, economic ties, and military cooperation. If this happens, the broader balance of power in the Middle East may remain largely unchanged. However, leadership transitions sometimes lead to new priorities. A new leader may decide that the country's focus should shift inward, toward economic reform, domestic stability, or rebuilding public confidence at home. If such a shift occurs, Iran's regional posture could become less aggressive and more cautious. On the other hand, some analysts believe the opposite could happen. If internal political competition intensifies, factions within the Iranian system may attempt to strengthen their legitimacy by demonstrating power abroad. In that scenario, regional tensions could increase rather than decline. Such developments would affect several important geopolitical relationships. For example, Iran's relationship with Saudi Arabia has historically shaped much of the political balance in the region. Both countries have competed for influence across the Middle East for decades. Changes in Iran's leadership could either ease that rivalry or intensify it. Another crucial relationship involves Israel. Tensions between Iran and Israel have been among the most significant security concerns in the region. Any shift in Iran's leadership structure could potentially alter how that relationship evolves in the years ahead. Global powers are also watching closely. Countries such as the United States, Russia, and China all maintain strategic interests in the Middle East. The direction Iran chooses could influence diplomatic negotiations, energy markets, and regional security arrangements. Energy is another critical factor. The Middle East holds some of the world's largest oil and gas reserves. Political instability in the region can affect global markets within hours. If Iran's internal transition leads to conflict or uncertainty, the economic ripple effects could extend far beyond the region itself. But beyond geopolitics and economics lies a deeper reality. The Middle East has long been shaped by powerful individuals, rulers, kings, presidents, and revolutionary leaders whose personal decisions influence the fate of millions. When such figures disappear from the political stage, entire systems are forced to adapt. Sometimes those systems grow stronger. Sometimes they fracture. And sometimes they evolve into something entirely new. For Iran and for the Middle East as a whole, this moment represents one of those rare turning points in history, a moment when the future has not yet been written. The next chapter will not be decided in a single day. It will unfold slowly through decisions made in government offices, military headquarters, diplomatic meetings, and even in the streets of cities across the region. And years from now, historians may look back on this moment and say that it was the beginning of a new era in the Middle East. But today, the story is still unfolding.